For our main program, I'm going to let Benita Dodd introduce our speaker because she runs our environmental initiative. You'll recognize her from her picture in the Sunday paper.
Well, good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm Benita Dodd, and most of you know that I speak with a very funny accent, and my pet line is that, don't tell me I'm not Southern because I'm a whole lot more Southern than any of you in this room. But I'm really excited to be talking today about our global warming initiative, what we call our climate change education project for Georgia, because we have decided to launch this in the face of some really hard pushes from environmental zealots. Now, I call them environmental zealots because we're all environmentalists in this room. We all want the best climate, we all want the best environment for our children, we want a great Georgia. And all we want in this whole debate is a whole lot of reasonableness, some common sense, and help us make our lives better. But don't force us to do things that don't have much cost benefit, I guess. As I said, as I've told many of you, I'm from South Africa, hence the strange accent. But I used to be on the editorial board at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and many of you don't know that my family isn't originally from South Africa. In fact, they came to South Africa via an island called the loneliest island in the world. Now, if you can tell me where the loneliest island in the world is, Phil Kent, would you stand up? Our famous author and our Georgia Gang talk show member has written a book called Foundations of Betrayal. And if you can tell me where the loneliest island in the world is, you get to be the lucky winner of Phil's great book. Anyone?
Cavalier.
Tristan da Cunha. It's a volcanic island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And it's been evacuated several times, and my ancestor was actually a shipwrecked sailor. There are 300 people who live on that island, and I was on the editorial board, and a story came across the wires talking about how the island of Tristan da Cunha had been hit by a hurricane. And the chieftain of the island, yes, I'm descended from chieftains, the chieftain of the island said, "This is terrible, we need help. Our British territory needs help because this is global warming." And I looked at it and I thought, hello, this island was populated by shipwrecked sailors hundreds of years ago. What was that caused by? And that motivated me on the editorial board to start writing about global warming. So coming to the foundation and doing this has just been absolutely exciting. So nobody's won Phil's book. I get to go home with it. And two people, before I introduce our guest, Chris Horner, two people who have actually helped us considerably in the foundation are our esteemed Senate Natural Resources Chairman, Ross Tollison, who is always willing. Would you stand up and give a wave to everybody, Ross? Who is always willing to come and speak to the foundation and speak to our supporters and tell us what's going on down at the Capitol as far as climate change. And our adjunct scholar, Harold Brown. Would you stand up, please, Harold? Who writes some spectacular articles about the realities in Georgia and is the author of the book called The Greening of Georgia. I encourage you all to pick it up and see just how great our state is and how far we've come. Launching this global, I keep calling it global warming. It's actually a climate change education project, and I'm going to have to really try to remind myself of this. Is really important to our industries. And as you know, the Georgia Public Policy Foundation is a market-oriented think tank based on, focused on state issues. And just for a minute or a couple of minutes, I want somebody to come up here and talk to you and tell you just what climate policy means to Georgians and to Georgia industry. Another one of our great supporters, Ed Crowell, who is head of the Georgia Motor Trucking Association. And if you think that Bob Snyder is hitting us up for a lot of UPS freight charges now, you wait until climate policy regulation comes up. But let Ed come and talk to us just for a few minutes about what it means to industry in Georgia.
Thank you, Benita, and good morning, everyone. Benita, just really quick, what you call it when 300 shipwrecked sailors end up on that little island is called bad navigating. Okay. Although Brian over here said it was George Bush's fault. But I appreciate this opportunity, and I always like supporting the foundation and the work that it does. Obviously, they do a lot of work in a lot of areas of great concern to our industry. But I did want to tell you a little about what we're seeing in the real world in terms of global warming, or global warming policy, I should say, because it's really much more of a political than a political item, a political effort than anything that's based in science, and you'll hear more about that. I am old enough to remember in school being taught about geology and about the Earth, and being taught that the world gets warmer and the world gets cooler and that these things happen. That was before it was all politicized. Now, apparently, everything was pristine until people started having internal combustion engines and making progress, and now we're the fault of all that there is. Well, that translates into a political movement that is really detrimental to the idea of free enterprise in this country and free enterprise around the world. It translates into efforts at control. Not surprisingly, in this country, some of the biggest or best examples of that start in California. And let me tell you just a couple real quick that are very practical and already having an effect on everything that you pay for. One of which is the Port of Los Angeles. Port of Los Angeles is run, air quality out in California is run by the California Air Resources Board. This is an unelected board that has complete total authority and regulation. The California state legislature cannot even tell them to stop what they're doing. They are also a board that is way off the deep end ideologically. They don't care about science. If they get a good idea, they think a good idea, they're going to implement it. One of the ideas they've implemented out in the ports in California is the idea that every container that comes through should pay a $70 tax. Well, when you think about the millions of containers that come through, you can see there's a lot of money coming in there and a lot of added cost for consumers. Well, what they do with that tax is, among other things, they buy trucks that run on liquefied natural gas that are only used inside the Port of California, so that when a trucker comes to the Port of California, they have to get out of their truck, take a Port of California's truck, drive it in to get the container, bring it back out, then hook it to their truck, and then drive on their merry way. How that affects air quality, I have yet to figure out. What it does affect, though, is their ability to control things, because part of the regulation is they also want everyone that comes into the into the port, to become an employee of a unionized company. Now, I've got nothing against unionized companies, and I've got nothing against unions, but how joining a union helps climate change, I haven't made that connection yet. But the California Air Resources Board has made that connection, somehow. What is really scary about the California Air Resources Board is that the Obama administration is basically letting them write air quality policy for the entire country. There's a method by which other states can adopt California's regulations. For years, the federal government has kept California from going off the deep end in climate change policy and in these rules and regulations, and helped protect other states. Well, now the Obama administration is basically giving a free rein to the California Air Resources Board, so that the EPA in Washington won't say, hey, we thought it up. It'll all be California that thought it up. And it's all about control. Some of that's even come to Georgia. There was a regulation proposed last fall by our EPD, which is generally a good group of people, but it would have fined companies, it would have fined property owners if vehicles on their property idled too long. Too long being defined as 15 minutes. So if an inspector came by and decided the vehicle had been sitting on your lot for more than 15 minutes, they would fine the owner of the vehicle, but they'd also fine you for allowing that idling to go on. That's the kind of minute, ridiculous regulations we're starting to look at and that are coming down the pipeline because of what these people see as an ability to control everything. We know you can't control everything, but when people try, the cost just continues to grow and grow and grow. So I applaud you all for being here, and I encourage you to stay involved and stay active with Georgia Public Policy Foundation, because they're one of the few people out there holding up the market side and the freedom side of this equation. So thank you for that time.
Well, Chris Horner, who is visiting with us today, is a senior fellow with the Competitive Enterprise Institute, and he's no stranger to being maligned by environmental zealots. He's very familiar with that. In fact, Greenpeace listed him in its field guide for climate criminals. I consider that an honor. He's a respected attorney and author, and he's represented CEI and scientists and members of Congress on matters of environmental policy in the federal courts, including the U.S. Supreme Court. He's the author of 2 great best-selling books, which he says if you brought the book along, he's happy to sign it for you. He's written The Politically Incorrect Guide to Global Warming and Environmentalism. I wish I thought up that title. It's spectacular. And then Red Hot Lies, How Global Warming Alarmists Use Threats, Fraud, and Deception to Keep You Misinformed. Ladies and gentlemen, I can think of no better person to help us launch our climate change education project than Chris Horner. He has a long list of accomplishments to his name, but I am going to let him speak to you and clear the deck.